As always on The Exchange, we go a little bit deeper in terms of all issues. We don't just scratch the surface. And today is no different. This evening, we are live on Facebook as well. Do log on to our pages at Capi Talk FM, at Rumbitsanenge, at Ishmael Sakurenika. We are broadcasting this particular conversation and we've just gone live. So big wave if you're just joining us on our Facebook live platforms. If you're just joining us on any other platform, good evening to you and thank you so much for making us your choice. This evening, we are talking all about e-waste management in Zimbabwe, and I'm not doing it alone. I'm joined by two gentlemen in the studio, Engineer Nyarufuka and Rangarirai Mangundu. Engineer Nyarufuka, good evening and thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. I greet you.
Fantastic. We're also joined by Rangarirai Mangundu, who is the head of membership and capacity building for the Internet Society. Ranga, good evening. Thanks for joining us.
Good evening to you and thank you for having us today.
Wonderful, wonderful. You know, I'm looking forward to learning a lot today, and I hope that you, our listeners, are also primed and ready with your notebook and pen, because you can never know everything. And the internet issue and how we use things, I think we're a little bit behind as a country, generally. So let's start off there. I mean, maybe, you know, Ranga, in terms of unpacking the level of understanding that we have as Zimbabweans in terms of the use of the internet and all the other ancillary tools that come with it.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity and question. I would like to first ask our audience who remembers where their first handset is. We hardly do.
Oh,
to those who don't let go easily of things, maybe it's piled in the house somewhere. But most recently, COVID-19, the effects, the regulations, they forced us to wake up in a digital world, and the acceptance rate is very high in Zimbabwe. And as a developing country, we have been using electronic gadgets, appliances, and it's leading to the stockpiling of e-waste. E-waste generally is those appliances that have reached their end of life and that are being disposed by the users. So before you get used to your iPhone 12, there's a 13 Pro, there's a 14, who knows where we'll be by the end of the year. But the great question is, are we aware of the effects of e-waste? How are we managing as a country, as individuals? This is why we're here today.
Absolutely. Engineer, I want you to just get in there. I mean, he sort of got into it, but for somebody who's listening to this and wondering what is e-waste, perhaps you'd like to go in a little bit deeper before we even get into what is wasted in the process of getting the internet.
Thank you very much for engagement. Firstly, let me define what is e-waste. As my colleague has just been alluded, electronic waste, as it is also being referred sometimes, is just an electronic gadget that has reached its or close to end of its useful life. So we are talking of an electronic gadget that has worked for years and actually has been excluded or dumped by the user. So our main issue is how to dump the electronic gadgets and also how to manage if they have been dumped. So this is why we are here. We are going to unpack some issues emanating to the problems that are being raised by the citizens, and also in the cyberspace we have got many issues that are being raised by the users regarding the e-waste management and probably on the legislation. So we are going to hear more.
Okay. Coming right back to you, Ranga, let's get into this. I mean, so what gets wasted in the process of using the internet?
Okay, like I said, that we have adopted the use of the internet in our everyday lives. Somehow, everything that we do nowadays revolves around the internet. In the internet, we're talking of infrastructure, those telecommunication equipments. We are talking about getting the internet, like radio, getting it to the people. We have gadgets that we use, with media that we use to make sure that people are connected. As an organization, the Internet Society champions the accessibility of the internet to the underserved and unconnected communities. You need your mobile device to do your homework. We are constantly facing trouble from parents who ask homeworks in WhatsApp groups. They use their gadgets, right? There are servers that make sure that everyone is connected. They are those boosters. We normally call them boosters for the mobile connectivity. These reach an end of life, like what Taura has said. Remember, as technology advances, something might still be in use, but we just dispose. You buy a new phone, you take your data, you dispose. Then technologically, we are end users as developing countries. We are going to bear the brunt of the recycling, because developed countries, remember, a person can trade in a gadget for a new one, just close by in South Africa. But where is the old one going? It's being shipped to Africa and other developing nations. So to answer what gets wasted, these are the ICT equipment, the rare minerals, the components. There's plastic. There are things that can be recycled, and there are also some dangerous substances like lead and mercury within most of these. People will tell you, if you go downtown, there's gold, there's very precious rare metals within most of our gadgets. This is how people get exposed to the bad stuff in trying to extract those precious things.
I've heard about old television sets and so on, that they then open it up and try and yeah. So it does take a lot of careful consideration. If it's an engineer, perhaps you can come in terms of, because I often don't think about what's going to happen to my laptop when I get another one, what's going to happen to my old phone. Is there a way to dispose? How are you supposed to be disposing of these gadgets? Is there a prescribed way of disposal, or simply just putting it in the bin and we call it a day?
Yeah, it's a challenge in Zimbabwe. First, before I answer your question, let me just take you a little bit back by defining our organization. We are Internet Society, a Zimbabwe chapter. Our role is to advocate for the use of open, affordable and trustworthy internet in Zimbabwe. And our objective is to continue to save the underserved and also the unconnected communities. So our role is to connect the unconnected. Now, back to your question. Zimbabwe is on the receiving end of the components or electronic gadgets which are doomed to be e-waste. If I'm saying e-waste, I'm referring to an electronic gadget that is a second-hand or a refurbished. These are the gadgets that we are seeing crossing the border in Zimbabwe. And some of them have 6 years in use before they are being refurbished. But once they are second-hand, you can use it for 2 years. So once you buy that gadget, after 2 years, you are going to dump it. And many people do not have the knowledge on how to dispose a product that has ended its lifespan. So we tend to dump it to the dump field. We refer to as to dump field. If you go to Mbare, if you go to Pomona, there is the famous dumping site. That's a dump field. So the problem that comes now is that there are certain illegal excavators that are coming and collect that dump, and they are going to burn it. And by burning it, they are causing a lot of health hazards. For example, there are toxins that are being generated, for example, lead, mercury. It will cause the cancers, the liver diseases, and also the kidney diseases. But all is being done out of ignorance. So there is incorrect way of dumping these gadgets. If I can ask you, that television, you can't even remember where it is now, but it has been dumped. There are many minerals that are being found on that gadget. There is hard plastic, there is metal, because those gadgets have got motherboards. So that motherboard cannot be easily destroyed by fire. So these are now causing serious hazards, health hazards into the community.
In that same breath then, my next question would be, you've talked about the illegal activities around disposal, dumping. What is the appropriate manner to dispose of your device once it has reached its usefulness and the end of its life cycle?
Okay, I'll take that one. If you feel like your device has reached an end of life, in Zimbabwe we've got EnviroServe, we've got Liquid Home. They are voluntarily collecting e-waste. To outline the process in briefly, there should be collection, there should be sorting, separation, then recycling towards the end, to just put the process in short. So you realize that we deal with several errors in the recycling of e-waste. If it is possible, when they collect, they can repair. Then we reuse. If not, we recycle. But what the problem is, these gadgets were not designed to be recycled. That's what makes it difficult, and what makes the extractors or the scavengers or the entrepreneurs in the e-waste sector get exposed. How to do it properly, it requires a lot of capital. And if as a country we can come up with a model or a framework to facilitate the correct management of e-waste, we can have people go to collection sites. EnviroServe, for the big gadgets, you can go to, I think it's 184B Masasarot, where you can go and leave your e-waste there, or they can arrange a green truck at a nominal fee to collect e-waste from universities, from companies, from any organizations that have large deposits of e-waste. But if you've got just your small phone, your little iPhone 4 that you no longer need and it's no longer working, you can hop into one of the Liquid Home payment points and drop it in a bin there. So now that we are raising awareness, our duty as the Zimbabwe chapter, we're raising awareness to the people to say, did you know that you can actually dispose of your e-waste safely? Don't bury it in your garden, because there are these issues of leaching. The bad components can go down into the water bodies. We drink that water and we end up with some diseases that we don't know where they came from. Then we blame other people or the dead and go on for our problems.
I like the way you said that. So maybe it's that laptop, it's that TV that you've put in your backyard. Yeah, it's okay.
Yes.
So it's important to know how to dispose of all of those devices. And I think a more important consideration is to understand that they are going to come to the end of their life. Because some people think that the phone is forever, the laptop is forever, and they want to continue using it and not know where to go. But at least now we know where we can start off. Now, engineer, I want to get into something that you spoke about. You said that a lot of these goods are then brought to Zimbabwe as second-hand, third-hand, pre-loved, pre-owned. Is it ideal, do you think, to restrict the imports of second-hand computers? What needs to be done in that vein?
Yeah, the process now brings the issue of legislature. And in Zimbabwe, let me assure you, or let me say, as of present, there is no legislation regarding the e-waste management. In other words, there is no policy that reflects on the management of electronic gadgets. The Minister of ICT has been trying to come up with a draft since 2016 April, and up to now, I think because of COVID-19, it's still on the draft. So there is no law which can actually come with some measures or specifications as to how are we going to import these second-hand products. And also the fact that we are a developing country cannot restrict business people and the entrepreneurs to import the second-hand laptops. And to a general person like me, if I show you a laptop, a refurbished laptop, it looks like a new one. You cannot differentiate it from the brand new one. And to someone, a second-hand laptop appears to be new. There is what we call south or north of Samora Machel Avenue. The south of Samora Machel Avenue tends to be the downtown, and the second-hand laptops becomes new. So the problem now is there is no law, and if you look at the current state importing these electronic gadgets does not attract customs duty as per the regulations of the ZIMRA. And it now comes to a period when we say we are restricting the import of these components. And in Zimbabwe, we have digital divide. People do not have computers enough. Schools do not have computers, and we cannot afford the new ones. So it comes now, it will become a challenge for us. So for me, and also as an organization, Internet Society, we think and we feel to prohibit the import is not a measure. But we can levy a tax. The government can levy a small amount of tax to all second-hand imported laptops, computers, or televisions, or any gadget, because that gadget is going to work only for a few years and is going to be disposed. The same way we disposed our 3310s, our 5110s, our old televisions, and it's going to cause the problems as we are experiencing.
You want to come in there, Ranga, in terms of that tax? How feasible is that?
Yes, I would like to allude to what Taura has said. Indeed, we need to levy a tax. Remember, we've got a raw electrification fund, we've got the AIDS levy. They have done strides in making things better in that field. Because of the cost of setup and management of e-waste, let me say this. Currently, we produce 53 million metric tons around the world, with China producing about 10 million per year. We are being followed by the States, right? And it is estimated that by 2030, another 74 million metric tons will be produced, because these are the trends now bring in the problems. Something new comes before something is really, really old and all that. So, to comment on the levy, I'm a young person, I'm under 35. It's not all bad about e-waste. E-waste is money. Young people can set up businesses, it's a value chain. You can be an extractor, you can be a repairer, you can be a recycler, you can find your own space in the matrix. So if we set up say, I read a paper by Mutsao and others, they are local guys, who said they were suggesting that if we could come up with an e-waste management agency, just like what EMA does. The Environmental Waste Management Act speaks into the management of waste in general, but it does not speak directly into the management of e-waste. But if we do find a policy, an agency that speaks directly, it will then champion these issues of awareness, how to manage, how policy is handled, what happens if we find you dumping e-waste. That way we'll do better. And if we can get 10 cents maybe from some import. Remember, people are holding things from Dubai and all that. Let's tax them a little bit. Let's find some money to set up the e-waste management plans. Then people can either drive there, or we have those green trucks going around. We can use schools as collection centers. We can do better, and we have enough brains in Zimbabwe to do that. And as ISOC, our Zimbabwe chapter, we are here to do the awareness. We are here to make sure that everyone knows where they stand in the puzzle. But another benefit, before I forget, is the environmental friendliness of e-waste management. We stop the hazardous substances getting into the air or into the water, and we have an environmentally friendly Zimbabwe.
A very, very good case being made here for us to be more responsible with the way that we use our gadgets, or particularly dispose of them when they come to the end of their life. This is the exchange this evening, and e-waste is what we're discussing. You can be part of the conversation on 0719100404. You can also call us in the studio on 0772269229. We are also on 0772269241. For those who are on Facebook, you can also send us your messages, and the gentleman will be happy to point us in the right direction. Now let's come to a very important aspect, being the aspect of knowledge. You'd find, engineer, that there are people who don't even know how to use the computers properly in the first place, or how to use all of these gadgets that allow you to access the internet. So where do we start to impart knowledge? The how to use, before we even get to how to dispose of e-waste?
Yeah, thank you. That's the prerogative role of Internet Society Zimbabwe chapter. We are here to educate the nation. We are here to advocate for the correct, and we are leaving no one. So many people in Zimbabwe are still living backwards. In other words, we still have a larger percentage of digital divide gap, meaning to say people who do have access to technology and the use of internet versus those that do not have. The gap is quite wider, and we still need to do a lot as a country, the public and the private sector also to lessen the gap. But since we have many people who cannot use a computer, many people who cannot even understand what is ICT, we cannot talk of disposing an e-waste product before we tell these people to come in a realm in which they understand. In other words, first of all, we need to drive an ICT sector in which everyone becomes aware of the electronic gadgets. Everyone at least must be able to operate a computer. Everyone must be able to know that if I use a cell phone for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, I need a new one, and this old one need to be get rid of, and the correct methods. So I think what is needed to be done, where we are lacking is on the knowledge aspect. Our people do not have the knowledge on how to dispose the e-waste. People do not have the idea. So literally, we think it's a good idea as a country to lob for an awareness centers, as Ranga has just been saying. I'm thinking we can use the universities as the center of knowledge, whereby we do awareness campaigns of e-waste management, and also the government can chip in through the Ministry of ICTs, Postal and Courier Services, in which they can also drive this sector. But on a larger scale, we need to drive ICT first on a bigger aspect, so that people would understand where we are coming from and where we are going. Without doing that, I'm not seeing us going anywhere, because it's pointless to tell an ordinary person in downtown that this type of computer that we are using or that is lying on the corner need to be disposed. It's pointless to go to a school in rural areas where there are computers where they are heaped in a corner, and telling them these gadgets can cause serious hazard. They need to be disposed well. So we still have the way to go.
A long way indeed. Ranga, you look like you wanted to come in there as well. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm sure you remember in your childhood you used to burn marara and things would pop. Yes, if you take toner from a printer, the powder makes a bang, the plastic becomes a fuel. So it's dangerous to try and dispose of e-waste on your own. But coming back to the question, should we talk about e-waste management before people learn? I'm an SDG champion in my other life, and I believe that by 2030 we can deliver quality education in Zimbabwe. How do we deliver quality education without the use of the internet? We have the Education 5.0 module, which talks about innovation and industrialization. It's difficult to really innovate when your mind is not open to the world as a village, to see what people are doing in Beijing, how people are adapting to other issues across the world. So the issue of raising not only awareness, but our skills, our digital skills that can help us compete into the digital economy. I want to challenge particularly university students, college students, like what the engineer has said, is you can take time during the weekend, during your semester breaks, to teach someone to have a Gmail account. I'm an IT professional, I provide IT support. Ukanzwa munhu achiti mwanangu handisi kuona ndibatsire, it's a polite way to say that I'm illiterate in the IT sense. So young persons, even the school going, the under the primary school going, they can teach you some few tricks. You just need to humble yourself and say, please show me. So before we get asked by the adults, we can go into the community and raise our level of education in terms of ICTs. No bank can operate with every bank now requires a working Gmail account. People used to just shout something and say, that's my email. You send them something, you say, did you receive? They didn't. So I'm challenging the young people in Zimbabwe to help us raise the digital skills level in our communities. And in doing so, we then raise the awareness on e-waste management. And by properly disposing, the members of the public can do way better in helping the government.
So a call to action and a challenge there for us. And don't be afraid to ask if you are a little bit out of your depth. And more importantly, the future is in the Internet of Things, so we must not get left behind. 0719-100-404. There are messages coming in already. There's a suggestion here from Seguba Buffet who says, why can we not also use churches as collection centers? I know that you talked about, and you were just, I suppose, suggesting and proposing a better way of a catchment area to get all of these computers and all these old gadgets, and then they're sent on to one place. So churches as a collection center, youth centers, are these things that you have thought about as the Internet Society of Zimbabwe chapter?
Yes, I'd like to agree that when the draft becomes policy, when we get to the stage where, as a nation, we start collecting. Remember, for now, volunteers are doing it, and they're not charging us to deliver to them. But if the government provides incentives, asks people and organizations to be collection centers, remember, when people take their time to do these things, incentives will help. Yes, churches can help, community centers can help. We have Zimpost, it is community information centers, which make sure people access the internet, access the news and everything. I would suggest that when we get to that point, anyone who is responsible, who can prove, can actually become a collection center, in my view.
Engineer, you want to come in there in terms of who should be given dare I say, is it a privilege to be a collector or a collection center, or it becomes a burden then when you don't know what to do with all you've collected?
Yeah. On the positive side, we are seeing the informal becoming formal, because the challenge that we will have is that if we create the collection sites, we will be having some other players, informal players, who can come informally and take these components, and they are actually going to resell them. So you'll be seeing a device that has been dumped, or that has been doomed, has ended its useful life, being sold in downtown. It will happen. So first of all, the legislature is very important, like what Ranga has said. We need this draft to come to be a full policy. So once we have the final document in place, and we can now be able to strategize who can be a collection center, the government can now assist, because it's not going to be a collection center as somebody can see. It will be a very big plant where there are going to be rules and regulations, and also to dump your gadgets, it has to go some formal processes. So if we select churches, schools and other entities to be the collection centers, it has to be done under the legislature, because we will be experiencing a certain way whereby the ex-Avengers, they will come informally and take those gadgets and go and resell. So we want to prevent such scenario.
Indeed. And also just looking at how far you've come in terms of lobbying, in terms of putting across the draft, how involved were you as the Internet Society Zimbabwe chapter in those consultations, and really how far has the needle been pushed to get this policy to see the light of day. I don't know, Rango, do you want to come in, and then we can defer to engineer as well?
Okay, I'll let the engineer answer that part, but I would love to answer what we are doing as the Internet Society in terms of e-waste management. We have embarked on a research in partnership with the Research Council of Zimbabwe, being supported as well by Potras, to ask, we're talking about the deep dive, to really ask where are we in terms of awareness, what is the model, or how have we adopted the management of e-waste in Zimbabwe, and to try and come up with a suggestion of how best we can go forward in terms of e-waste management in Zimbabwe. I'll let the engineer answer the main part of the question in terms of what we have done to push for the policy.
Absolutely. Engineer, please come in on that.
Okay, thank you. So far, we have made some engagements with the Ministry of ICT, Postal and Courier Services. We have been there several times, seeing the directors responsible for the implementation of the draft policy on e-waste management. We have met certain directors, and as of today, before we come here, we were on the telephone call with the one director on policy and administration, who is actually spearheading this process, this draft of e-waste. And currently, at the moment, I think COVID-19 has affected most of the initiative. That's why the policy is still on the draft. But whenever they try to move, they made some consultation, and they consult us. And we also consult them whenever we have some projects to run. Like what Ranga has just said, we have embarked on a project from Research Council of Zimbabwe and Potras, and we are also consulting Ministry of ICT, because we want to move together. But to a greater extent, we are also running a project, a bigger project that we have started in 2021, called Greening the Internet on e-waste management. And the project is ending on the 5th of March this year, 2023. So far, we have achieved a lot in terms of research, and this research is ultimately assisting the Ministry of ICT in drafting their bill or their policy. So we are working hand in glove with the ministry, and we are also working hand in glove with other players like the telecoms players. These major 3 telecoms players, we are also working with them. Because of late, if you remember, sometimes back, Econet has installed some bins outside, written e-waste, electronic waste, and people did not actually, there was lack of knowledge. People would just walk past by, not realizing what those bins were for.
Or even putting rubbish in them, isn't it?
Yeah, they were putting remains of chicken ends, but those bins were actually made for the e-waste, the electronic gadgets. If your earphones have worn out, you can't just throw on the street. There were bins provided, but those bins, they just, I don't know where they are now. But it was an awareness that has been started before an initiation that we are talking about. So these are the problems, but ultimately, as Internet Society, we are engaging the ministry, and the ministry is engaging us.
So there's that back and forth, and we can look forward to this policy becoming more finalized, and perhaps becoming, the go-to policy when it comes to e-waste management. I beg your pardon. Absolutely. Well, if you're just joining us, you can be part of the conversation on 0719100404, all about e-waste. Did you know that you should dispose of your gadget after it has reached its lifespan responsibly? Putting it away or putting it in the bin is not enough. Please take an extra step to get this information. And before we finish with Ranga and the engineer here, they will share their information so that you can have somewhere to take all of these things. Rightfully so, maybe you've had gadgets and laptops from 10, 20 years ago. Some people just have a room full of all of these gadgets and have no idea what to do with them. So I'm also very excited about this conversation that we're having. You talked a little bit about recycling, Ranga. Let's get into the recycling process. There's a few R's involved there. What is the recycling process when it comes to waste management, and what are some of those R's that our listeners should really catch on to and start to do?
Okay, thank you. The R's, we need to repair, reuse, recycle. In other perspectives, there is also reduce. If you can continue using your old device, please do. There's no point in buying cars, filling car parks, or buying gadgets. Yeah, I've seen, especially the entrepreneurs or the big bosses in the neighborhood.
Oh my gosh, you're starting a war.
Walking around with 5, 6, my iPhone, my new one. It's not necessary. From an e-waste perspective,
I see.
If you are showing us what you have, that's okay. Then, if it's possible to repair and donate to someone, UNICEF had some research and they say that 3 out of 4 primary schools in Zimbabwe do not have access to the internet. Now, if you can donate to someone who can access the internet, do homework, better their lives, that's okay. Then if we can't, if it's broken down, some gadgets you can take out parts and fit in other those that are being repaired. If we can't, then we extract, we separate, we take the metals, we recycle the plastics. I'm sure once in a while in traffic you have seen Munanengani is a big saga of plastics. Those are also entrepreneurs in the plastic sector. They take to the collection sites, they press, they crush, they send to other countries. Now that we are celebrating the ban on export of raw-based metals in Zimbabwe, we can also look into not exporting that plastic, trying to find ways on making more value out of the e-waste. So the recycling process is complex, the setting up is expensive, but we can start now and get somewhere by the time we get to 2030. We need to better our... if you talk about Africa in 2063, the Africa we want is an Africa that is less e-waste. It's an Africa that is more environmentally friendly, where everyone has a gadget that they can use to access the internet. We normally drive back home to get our phones, not our Bibles. So if that's the case, let's make sure that everyone has got a phone that has got a Bible, and we've got to change.
I like the sound of that, but hey, it seems like such a tall order. You talked about access to the internet, access to digital platforms for those in rural areas. Engineer, do you want to come in there? The holistic picture then in terms of inclusion and digitizing how did you put it? You said making sure that those who are
underserved and unconnected.
Underserved and unconnected.
It is actually an intrinsic part of our mandate as an internet society to make sure that everyone is connected. At least everyone must have a knowledge of how to use internet. So we are facing a challenge when it comes to the divide situation, whereby people are being divided by geographical regions, whereby there is town, there is a rural. So that's where the problem will start. But as internet society, we are working tirelessly to equate the two, because if we believe that traditionally information comes to schools so that the learners would disseminate the information to the community, and we still believe in that same scenario. If we connect the schools, we connect the community. So this is what we really want to assure the nation, that we are working hand in glove with the government to connect the schools, especially those in rural areas, so that they have at least equal access to internet like what the learners in towns are doing. And once we have done that, we have created a platform whereby everyone is able to to read at Google. Everyone is able to access the information when it's wanted. So this is what we are currently doing. But we are facing some challenges because we cannot connect every school in rural areas because of the infrastructure. But we are appealing to other players like the telecoms companies and other civic organizations to also put a hand so that by 2030, every school in rural areas is connected. At least every clinic is also internet, so that our people would not lag back when it comes to communication. Because we cannot tell someone how to dispose an electronic gadget before he or she has met it, probably on newspaper, in radio, or from internet. So we appeal to Econet, we appeal to Net1, we appeal to other players so that they establish, even portras the regulators, the base stations in the furthest part of the country, so that those areas will become connected, accessible, because we cannot connect an area without bandwidth having been reached. So we appeal to portras, at least if these telecoms companies share the base stations, unlike Econet syncing a base station in an area till one comes and sync another one, and this other one comes and sync again. They can sync one base station and share the frequencies so that it burdens less. Then we connect the nation.
I like the sound of all of that, Engineer. We're fast running out of time. Allow me to perhaps start with you, Ranga, in terms of wrapping up. A parting shot and word to our listeners on becoming more responsible and knowledgeable when it comes to e-waste and proper disposal of their pre-loved gadgets.
Young people are not the future. We're here now and we can make a difference. Let us not be ignorant to the issue of e-waste. It's a developing disaster, actually. So let us open our ears, open our eyes, ears and so on, and read more about it, research more, see what we can do about it. There's also money in e-waste management. If we can do that for our country, much the better. And before I say my goodbyes, you can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, at ISOC Zim on both platforms. You can send us an email on info@isoczim.org.zw. We are here for you, and membership is free. It will forever be free. You join us as the Internet Society, you access learnerships, you learn more about these issues, current trends in the world in terms of the internet, and you meet like-minded people and challenges to solve. It's something that you can wake up doing to change the world. They tell you that you can change the world before you turn 40. So I'm imploring to the young people in Zimbabwe to join us and change the world.
Absolutely, and we can do it being under 40.
Yes.
Engineer, coming to you, your parting shot and recommendations to all internet users, to all those who were born BBC before computers, and just a general word of encouragement on use, adoption, and more importantly, disposal of all of these gadgets.
I encourage everyone to have at least access to internet. I know that some would say data is expensive, but generally nothing is going to be very easy. But we are going to chip in as an organization advocating for the connection. Where we can find it possible, we are going to connect, and also the government is making its effort. So at least if everyone has access to internet, then we can be able to learn all what we are saying. And lastly, I can say disposing the e-waste is not easy, but we are going to do it in phases, and people are going to learn. People are going to be provided with a lot of information, awareness, and recycling is not easy. And all these players that are collecting the electronic waste are the electronic aggregators, because we are not yet recycling in Zimbabwe. But by 2030, as Ranga has just said, we hope that through our initiatives, in conjunction with the government initiative, we could have been building a large plant, and we are working towards that. Once the draft that I have said is there, is completed, we have the legislation that permits us to do what we are talking.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Engineer, for being with us, as well as Rangarirai Mangundu, both from the Internet Society, the Zimbabwe chapter, ISOC, and we're talking all about e-waste management. So many things for you to consider. You have a huge responsibility to dispose of all those gadgets properly. If you don't know, please log on to the Facebook pages, log on to log on to all the materials and resources are being used in that regard. Well, that's it for the exchange this evening. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming in, and I look forward to speaking to both of you some more about the internet and, more importantly, e-waste.
Thank you and good night.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Good night, gentlemen.